All right, welcome back, guys. We are going to be continuing with that consolidation of power. So, this is how Hitler kind of tightens his grip on the rest of Germany, and he does this through a massive power play called the Night of the Long Knives. And this is kind of the really massive, super huge betrayal that Hitler kind of commits to actually gain control of the Nazi Party and then also the German army. So, the Night of the Long Knives is a political purge, which means that it is Hitler getting rid of all of his political rivals. All right, so it's the same kind of thing that, like, Stalin's done. Or Stalin, sorry, or Lenin and stuff did during or Lenin during the Russian Revolution, and then Stalin through the 30s. So, Hitler becomes chancellor, right? He's got the chancellorship from President Hindenburg. You've got the Nazi Party forming that majority coalition because they're getting a lot of the right wing groups because they're all a little bit scared of the communists and stuff. They're all seeing, like, what Stalin's doing over in Russia, and they're a little bit afraid. So they form a majority coalition, and then Hitler lucks out and he gets the fire in the Reichstag, and that allows him to use like Article 48 and activate those emergency powers, so he can just start outlawing political groups willy-nilly and getting rid of, like, any political organization, so not just the parties but also their newspapers and also maybe unions and stuff like that as well. So he's just getting rid of them left, right, and center. You've got the political hit list. So the Purge hit list is authored by these three guys. So you've got Heinrich Himmler, who's the little guy on the left, and then you've got Reinhard Heydrich, who's the head of the SD. He works underneath Heinrich Himmler. And then you've got Hermann Göring, who's the minister for Prussia. He's in charge of Prussia. He's got the police force. He's got his Gestapo, and the Gestapo and the Gestapo and sorry, his Gestapo and then Himmler's SD and SS, they kind of come into conflict a little bit because they're both competing for that same power. So these two guys don't particularly like each other. There's a little bit of, like, rivalry between them. And let me just draw this really sad face real quick because I don't get to show. Ooh, that looks gross. Anyway, these guys don't really like each other that much. They don't like each other at all. Hitler's also got a role a little bit coming through, but for the most part, it's these three guys trying to consolidate their power. The victims. So these are some of the notable victims. So going from left to right, we've got Ernst Röhm. Okay, so Ernst Röhm's that guy with the swastika on the left that you can see. Remember, he's the head of the SA. You've got Gregor Strasser, and Strasser is he was kind of in charge of the Nazi Party while Hitler was, banned essentially, and he really helps it grow. So he helps it grow from 71 groups to 270ish in just a tiny little bit of time, and then he got a little bit too popular for Hitler's kind of liking. And then who else have you've got? You've got von Schleicher up the top there. So von Schleicher, remember, he's the former chancellor, and he's obviously a political threat. Like, he's a threat. He used to be chancellor. He still kind of has a little bit of clout, and he's clearly a political threat. He also tried to split the Nazi Party by gaining Strasser, and Strasser's kind of like left-leaning. It sounds weird to say left-leaning Nazi faction, but tried to pull Schleicher pulled Strasser, sorry, and the left-leaning Nazis over to him. Hitler obviously doesn't like that. Strasser was also offered the vice chancellor role by von Schleicher, and Hitler made him not take that role either. Strasser's brothers also even made their own style of Nazism called Strasserism, which is basically the same thing as like Nazism. It's anti-capitalist, anti-West. They've got very large social reformation views. They're into like nationalism and stuff like that. And Gregor Strasser's brother actually ended up leaving the Nazi Party as well. So yeah, Strasser was a threat because he was too popular for Hitler's liking. Hitler didn't like that he was a popular guy. Um, within the Nazi Party, obviously, not specifically around the world. Anyway, this guy down the bottom here, this guy is Karl Ernst. So, not to be confused with Ernst Röhm. Karl Ernst, he's the head of the SA in Berlin, and there's some ideas that he might have known about the Reichstag fire. All right, so what I would like you guys to do is find out in a little bit more depth why each of these people were specifically targeted and killed, or specifically targeted at least, during the Night of the Long Knives. So I would say if you got 4 people, give it 5 minutes apiece, 6 minutes apiece. So to spend between 20 to 25 minutes looking at each of these individuals and why were they a threat to Hitler. So why were they a threat? So just pause it now, work through, and when you think that you've got about a paragraph on each person, unpause and we can get back to it. All right, we're going into another little research task as well. So create a timeline of the Night of the Long Knives, including the events leading up to it. Okay, so try and go for the main kind of events, and give it a little bit of detail. You don't need to be like do any evaluating or anything. Just a little bit of detail, maybe 1-2 sentences about each particular event. It should be perfectly manageable for you guys. Plus, your textbook, again, has got a huge amount of useful research in there for you. Alrighty. So, spend maybe 15-20 minutes trying to get that done. Please work through, relatively focused on this, as it is, quite important to your learning. All right, here's my timeline. So, February 1934, Hitler's told Rome that SA would not be a military force, all right? And Rome's agreed, but he kind of wasn't really going to keep his word. So he's the guy who's thinking we must have a military revolution. Rome's out there thinking the only way to kind of get Nazism to the front is through this massive, and he's been quoted as saying there has to be a socialist revolution essentially, all right? And Hitler's basically been like, nah, sorry mate, you're not having it. And then Himmler, Heydrich, and Goring. Sorry, Goring should be capitalized there as well. These guys would all directly gain from Rome dying. And in June the 4th, 1934, Rome takes personal leave and agrees to a meeting in a resort with on June 30 with other SA leaders. You've got von Papen and other Nazi officials worried about a Marxist-style revolution by Rome. So they're, von Papen, so he's not even a Nazi. He's already worried about there being a revolution by Rome. And Hitler was informed that if he didn't stop the SA from rolling around beating people up, fancying themselves as like a military, that Hindenburg's declaring martial law, which means he gets control of the army and he's just going to, turf him out. And that's going to cause Hitler to lose a huge, huge amount of power. If he loses the army, he essentially loses Germany. So rumors start spreading around about a potential putsch. You've got the SS and the army working together. Okay, and on June 30th, Hitler begins the SA purge in Munich, and he starts to move to the countryside resort. He takes out Rome and other leaders. Rome's taken to prison to be executed. Hitler contacts Goring. Again, it should be capitalized. I don't know what's going on there. In Berlin, and Goring, with his police force and the SS, began targeting any SA leaders, or just any other people on the hit list, so the list of unwanted peoples. And basically what's kind of happened is the SS has, Hitler and the SS and stuff, they've told the army, hey, we're about to go kill all these people. You guys just, stay inside. Don't come out. Don't worry about it. We're just going to go off and do this thing real quick. And when they say do this thing real quick, they actually mean get rid of the SA. They mean purge the SA and like the leadership. So they're cutting off the heads of the Hydra essentially, and they're going to replace them with people that are a little bit more in line with the Nazi Party values. Okay, so if you need to pause it and take a little bit of time to write down the last couple of slides, please do so. Otherwise, we will carry on. So, research. This is where you guys are going to create your own little, I guess, fact pack about the Night of the Long Knives. So I want how many people were estimated to have been purged, and then what was the official count. So the first two dot points, what do historians think, how many people have been purged, and then what's Hitler's, own admission. So generally the state will kind of lowball it and they'll be like, oh no, only like 30 or 40 or so people were purged, but in reality it could have been closer to 400 or 500 or so. All right, what was the primary method of purging? So were they all hung, or were they shot, or were they thrown into rivers? Find out what the primary method was. Who conducted the purge? How did they justify it? And then a national or international reaction. So, actually, do you know what? Let's change it. Let's go one national reaction to the purge and then one international reaction to the purge. So, if you can find one from maybe the UK, the USA, or France, that would be your best option. If you can find Russia, that would be good as well, but try and keep it to those big kind of superpowers. All right, and that should take maybe about a half hour or so. Well, actually, no, probably not even that. Probably about like 20 minutes, I reckon, if you're working solidly. So get that done, and we can move on to the consequences. All right, so consequences of the Night of the Long Knives. What you guys need to do is explain the consequences with respect to Germany and the international community. So, what happened in Germany as a result of this? Did Hitler gain a little bit more power, or did he lose international standing? Or what were the short term impacts? Were there any long term impacts? What happened to the SA? So, list of consequences of the Night of the Long Knives. And then after you've done that, I want you guys to pick one of those consequences and say, okay, which one's the most important? And I want you guys to evaluate why it's the most important. So, why is it better than the other ones? I want you to give me your justification. Okay, and that'll round us out for today. These last two dot points should maybe take you about 15 or so minutes. If you spend 10 minutes looking for consequences and then 5 minutes on creating your justification, I think that would be more than adequate. Until next time, I hope this was useful. Again, contact me in Teams or via email if you've got any further questions. Thank you.